And we ought to work together as a community. And so I talked with the city manager and have been working together. And so there was 8 folks who spent like 6 hours on Tuesday working on a house that doesn't belong to them, but it's a part of being community. And the message that sends throughout the rest of our community. And hopefully to neighbors, that if you have a neighbor who is in need, for whatever reason it might be, let's help out our neighbor. And I'm hoping that this spirit will catch on at the city, in the schools, and in our neighborhoods. And so these folks just worked really hard to bring the Spirit of Jesus Christ and the idea of taking off our garments, girding ourselves with a towel, and just washing feet. And I'm just so thankful. And this goes on and on all across our community with folks from New Song. But we know that it's hard work. Also, as we begin to work with people and the problems that they have, it's draining. You know, it's emotionally, it's physically, it's spiritually draining. And Jesus knew that. And Jesus grew weary. And Jesus needed rest. And He knew His disciples needed rest too. And so He encouraged them that, to take a rest. This whole Sabbath principle. As we're engaged in real ministry, there needs to be a time. And also as we engage in secular work, there needs to be a time every week, at least, where we go off and we get rest. And there's time for retreat. And Jesus said, come on. We need to go on retreat. We need to rest. We need to get respite. We need to be re-energized, okay? So He made time to get away. But look what happens in the text. You got to get your mind wrapped around what's happening here. All these people are converging on Jesus and the disciples, and they have these great needs. And Jesus calls His disciples to retreat. Okay, you get it? They get into the boat and they go across the lake. Now please, stay with me. Look at the people. Envision the people. What are they doing? They see where Jesus and His disciples are going. And so they run around the lake to meet Him on the other side. Do you see, can you feel the desperation that these people have? They know that Jesus has the answer and, in their impossible situation, and so they run around the other side of the lake to meet Jesus. They're desperate. And so we learn an interesting principle here that you can't always schedule your rest. You can't always schedule a time where you're going to be free from people who have need. The fact of the matter is that sometimes ministry is just flat inconvenient, isn't it? You want to take a rest. Look at what we don't hear Jesus say. Hey, people, we're on vacation right now. We're taking a little sabbatical rest. You're just going to have to leave for now. No, that's not what happened. What did it say? But Jesus had compassion on them. Like sheep without a shepherd, they needed someone to help them and guide them. And so He responded in the situation with compassion. And He left that message for His disciples, for us too. And so here's the thing I want to ask all of us. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? You've been there before? And maybe we've not always responded the way that Jesus did, with compassion, but rather, and I'll speak for myself first, with selfishness. Man, I just don't want to answer that phone call. I know who it is on the other end. Man, I just don't want to go talk to that person. I know what the deal is. Man, I just don't feel like helping that other person right now. Man, my week has been tough. And so when the crowd bumps in, do you follow the analogy? When the crowd bumps in, the real us begins to bump out. And I want to be like Jesus. When He saw those sheep without a shepherd, He was filled with compassion. Even though we still needed rest at this time, the crowd needed Him more. And He said, yeah, we're going to take retreat, but those people need us right now. How do you, and this is the convicting part to me in this message right here, right now, how do you and I respond when the crowd bumps into our life, to our schedule, to our vacation, to our time of rest? A real part of us pops out. Well, look at what the disciples do, because their response is a very common response. They say, Jesus, send the people away. Now imagine this. They see the people coming, and Jesus has been teaching, and they know that the people are getting hungry, and they say, send the people away. Now let's you and I go into this text, and let's figure out what's going on here, because really you could see this one of two ways. Were the disciples being very magnanimous, or were they being selfish? Were they being magnanimous, or were they apathetic? In other words, Lord, we are so concerned about these people that we really think that they need something to eat, and so this would be a good time to dismiss them. Or it's like, these people are driving me nuts. They are just needy, needy, needy. Send them away. Unfortunately, I think the latter was what was going on. I can remember watching on TV in the past, many years ago, that there would be these advertisements come on, and they'd show these little babies from Africa with distended bellies and flies all over them, and the people were asking for money and help. You know what was the easiest thing to do? Change the channel. Change the channel. Send them away. Get somebody else to deal with that. Think about all the times in our comfortable lives that we would rather be like these disciples and say, send them away. When the crowd bumps in, what do? Do we send them to the benevolence ministry leader? Hey, we've got a phone number for you. Go ahead and call this person. Send them away. There's nothing wrong with our benevolence ministry. As a matter of fact, we've got a new person in it, the We Care ministry, and is working really well. But what about you? Isn't Jesus making this lesson very personal to me and to you? But what about you? How many times as a pastor I've thought, oh, here comes a needy person. It's so good to send them away to another person to deal with. But what about you? You feed them. When the crowd bumps in here and Jesus asks them the question that you give them something to eat, you know, Jesus knew what he was doing. Over in the Gospel of Mark, it tells us ahead of time that he'd used this question to test them. Do you feel comfortable with the fact that Jesus tests his disciples? You don't have to answer that question right now. I know how we all feel about it. But this is a reality. We get tested all the time. And it's good for us. James tells us over there in James chapter 1 that this testing is good for us because it will develop us into the kind of person that Jesus wants us to be. But who likes a test? You young people down there, I mean, I know you can't wait till after Labor Day. School starts. You get to study and you're going to get tests. And I know Shelby Starnes is like, man, I cannot wait for my first test. And those of you who play sports, you can't wait for your first test at practice. And no, we don't like testing, but without testing, we don't grow. And Jesus gave his disciples tests to see what they're going to do. And basically, we got two choices here, don't we? Send them away or give them something. What would we do? What would you do in this situation? Jesus said, you feed them. Well, the first thing we do is we form a committee and we check out what our resources are, don't we? Verse 37, we look at our resources. What do we got? Well, we got 5 loaves of bread and we got 2 fish. Golly, we don't have enough. We got to feed more than 10,000 people. We got 2 sardines and 5 Ritz crackers. We can't do it, Lord. Can't do it. It's impossible. Isn't that kind of like sometimes churches do? Right? They get a committee. And you know what a definition of committee is, don't you? Anybody got a definition of committee? Because there's several of them out there. Okay, Bruce is smiling over there. He must have a committee definition. Do you? Either that or you're just like me today and you're just smiling. I don't know. I know it's coming. All right, well, I've got a new one. Definition of committee is a group of people who can do nothing individually and collectively decide nothing can be done. That's what a committee does, right? And we look at our resources and we analyze, and we get to this paralysis of analysis and decide we can't do it.